So for today, B'ezras Hashem, we're going to finish the Malacha of Borer, hopefully. I think so. Okay, so last time we spoke a lot about the Malacha of Borer, of separating. We mentioned the three conditions that are required in order for it to be allowed. It has to be for immediate use. It has to be that you're taking the good from the bad. You're taking what you want. And also, it has to be that you can't use a kli. You're not allowed to use a device to help you do the borer. You have to do it biyad, with your hand. You can't use like a sifter or this or that.
What about a spoon and a fork?
Okay, so we'll talk about a spoon and a fork. We're gonna get to that. That's on the agenda for today. Okay, but first we're gonna get into a very interesting topic. It's called borer balach. Borer when you have a liquid. So the Maritats, one of the Achronim, one of the poskim from a number of generations ago, he writes about the following question. Basically, somebody had a cup of wine and they had a fly in their cup, and they wanted to know, is it borer to take out the fly from the cup? So what would we think? We know that number one, you can't use a kli. Okay, so you're not using a kli. Number two, you have to take the good from bad. You're not doing that. You're taking the bad from the good. So it should be a problem, right? Yeah. So the Maritats says a very big chidush. His words are, he makes like a nice little rhyme. He says, Ein brera balach vegam et hatzira yishalach. Which means there's no borer when it comes to a liquid, and gam et hatzira yishalach. You could throw out the bug. So there's a big debate how to understand the Maritats, how to understand why this is not an issue of borer. So one understanding is because borer separating is only when you have little solids. But when you have a liquid, it's not, the malacha of borer is not by picking something out. It's a different malacha that's straining. So by liquids, you're not allowed to strain. By solids, you're not allowed to separate. Now over here, you're not straining it. You're just picking out the bug and throwing it away. Therefore, he says that's one understanding of why it would be allowed, because you're not straining it. And borer by a liquid is only when you're straining. The other understanding of why he says it's allowed is because it's something that's like floating and it's very distinct and it's floating on top of the water. It's not viewed as something that's a mixture, that's like mixed in. So those are the two understandings of the Maritats. Now, one of the other Achronim, the Taz, he argues with this. And he says that if you have a bug inside of a drink, you're not allowed to pick out the bug and throw it away. The way to do it, the heter is, you have to take like a whole spoonful, take out the whole surrounding area. Right? That's the heter of taking the good with the bad. The idea is that you're not removing the bad from the good, you're removing the entire mixture. So that's what the Taz says. So we have a machloket when it comes to borer with a liquid. The Maritat says it's allowed, and the Taz says no, it's not allowed. The only way you would be able to do it is if you take the whole surrounding area. So that's a machloket. Now, what do we follow? What's the bottom halacha? So the Rovadia writes that really a person should be machmir. A person should be machmir like the Taz and take the good from the bad. Take the good with the bad. To take out a whole spoonful, and that would be allowed. Yeah, good join. Yeah. So that would be the halacha. So if you have something mixed in with a liquid, you have, let's say, a hair in the soup or a fly in the drink or something like that. So you shouldn't just take it out with your hands. The way to do it is you take a whole spoonful and take it out. Which it's not so simple. The Chazon Ish isn't so happy about that heter, because at the end of the day, you're taking the bad out of the good. Right. But still right. So the reason to say that it's allowed is because you're not removing the bad, you're removing the whole mixture. It's not viewed as taking the bad from the good. You're just dividing the mixture into two, basically. But either way, that would be the way to do it. So that would be the heter that one could rely on to take the bad from the good. To take the good together with the bad when you're taking it out. Now, Rav Ovadia does write also that if, let's say, you have somebody squeeze the lemon into tea or something like that, and the seeds fell in, so he says you can't take out the seeds. Even the Maritatz, who says you're allowed to remove the things from the liquid, it sounds like he's understanding it's only if it's like floating, but if it's in there, you shouldn't do it. If it's like little lemon seeds that fell into the tea, you shouldn't take out the lemon seeds from the tea. The way to do it is you would, spill the tea into a different cup and just leave a little bit of liquid on the bottom with the lemon seeds. Okay, so that's what comes out. So comes out la halacha that if you have something that's floating, like we said, like a hair in soup or a bug or something like that, or like, I don't know, let's say a piece of cork in the wine or something, some debris that's floating in your liquid, according to the Maritatz, you would be allowed to take it out, but the halacha is that you should take the good together with the bad. And if it's not floating, if it's like mixed in or if it sank to the bottom, then it sounds like you really have to take the good from the bad. You have to take the water out and leave the debris, leave the seeds in. Okay, so that is that. By the way, just once we mention that halacha of if you have like seeds at the bottom of a cup and you want to pour out the water, the Shulchan Aruch writes that if you have, say back then in the wine there was sediment, there was like little pieces of like grapes and seeds and whatever on the bottom of the wine. Now, if you want to take the good from the bad, you want to pour out the wine, you could pour out the wine and leave the sediment at the bottom of the cup, but once you see that it's like it's not a flow anymore, it's like the water is like slowly dripping, at that point you have to stop. Because at that point you're using the cup to help you do the borer, to like keep the heavy stuff in the back and make the liquid, you're like holding it at the right angle to make just the liquid come out. That you can't do. You have to leave some liquid in there when you're using a cup to separate solids from the liquid. Okay. So this segues into a very common scenario. So let's say you have canned foods or vegetables. You have hearts of palm, corn, garbanzo beans, pickles, olives, any of those things in a can or in a jar with liquid. So are you allowed to drain the liquid or are you not? So Rav Ovadia writes that if you have things that are like large and recognizable in the water, like pickles, hearts of palm, large olives, they're big. So Rav Ovadia writes that would be allowed, and his reasoning, you'd be allowed to drain the water out of those. The borer would not apply to those. And the reasoning is because the way he says it is hai lechudei kai v'hai lechudei kai, which means each thing is like distinctly recognizable in the water. It's kind of like similar to the maritatz with the fly that's floating on top. Since it's like distinctly recognizable in the water, it's not viewed as mixed in. It's not viewed as a mixture that there would be an issue of borer. Now, with smaller things like corn or garbanzo beans, or something like that, that's viewed more as a mixture, according to many poskim. There's really a machloket about that, but it seems like something like that would be viewed as a mixture, and borer would apply. So it comes out that when you have large things like pickles, hearts of palm, large olives, you would be allowed to drain the water. And some say you could even use the lid of the can to like flip it over and drain the water. But when it comes to smaller things like corn, garbanzo beans, you shouldn't drain the water. The way to separate those in the mutter way would be to take like a fork or something and just dump it into a cup or to whatever you're using, into your bowl. So if you want to make a corn salad, you open the can and you just with a fork dump in the corn and you could leave the water behind. That way you're taking the good from the bad. Yeah.
What about those, like a fork or a utensil with holes inside? Isn't that doing the borer for you because it's holding the liquid?
Okay, good. So there is a difference between, beautiful question. So we're gonna talk about like slotted spoons and stuff later, but if you just have to do it in a way that you're not like purposely trying to, like you can't use the fork and like hold it to the side and like drain the liquid. You just have to like dump it in, and you can't be super makpid if liquid gets in. You just have to. Or alternatively, you could drain the water if you drain it in a way that like corn will fall out too, and you're not like super, you know, you just like dump it out from the can, and like you have to not care if some corn or some chickpeas or whatever you're draining falls out. But the most effective way to do it is with a fork, and just you can't be super sensitive about water getting in. Okay, so that is when it comes to smaller things. Okay, so now what about tuna? So when we spoke about schita, when we spoke about squeezing, we mentioned that there would be no issue of squeezing the water out of the tuna, because you're allowed to squeeze liquid out of something if you're making that thing better, if it's not the liquid that came with it. So tuna, it's outside liquid. It's not like a lemon or an orange that you're squeezing its own liquid out. It's liquid that got absorbed from someplace else. You're allowed to squeeze it out of the food if you want to make the food better. You want to make the food more edible. So like pickles or whatever, you want to squeeze it to make it less vinegary, you're allowed to do that. Tuna also wouldn't be an issue of squeezing, but we'll talk about borer, yeah.
Are you allowed to cook it?
Cook tuna?
Meaning, if it, you know what they do in Israel, they wrap it up with paper towel, they light it on fire. Are you allowed to do that on Shabbat with tuna?
On Shabbat, it would be a problem.
It's not cooking it really, because technically it's edible.
Yeah, it is edible, but it's not something that you would have to know how it's made. First of all, on a
site, is that what it's called?
yeah. So one issue is, even if something is fully cooked, you can't put it on an open flame. The only the question would be, can you put it on the hot plate or something like that? Right? So that would depend on the process. I'm not super familiar with the process. I think they steam it. I don't know exactly how cooked it's considered, but yeah, that would be a good question. Are you allowed to put tuna on the hot plate? So I guess when we do bishul, I'll get into that. Okay, but the question is, so there's no issue of squeezing by tuna, but what about borer? So the water that's absorbed in the tuna, that's not borer, that's schita, that's squeezing. That would be allowed. But the thing is, if you open the can, there's water on top and there's water in between, so that would be more borer. So the way to do it with tuna also is, you would have to, the water, it's very hard to know. The water on top, you would be able to kind of just like dump out, but every tuna can is different, and it's not always fully on top. There's water inside also. Therefore, the poskim write that with tuna, the way to do it is the same way like we said with the corn, to scoop it out with a utensil and put it into whatever bowl you're going to be using to prepare the tuna. So that's the way to do it with tuna. Okay, just once we're on this topic, I know this is not a borer issue, but the poskim do talk about opening cans on Shabbat. And really, it's not a simple thing. There are a lot of, many poskim write that it's a problem to open cans, because you're making a kli, you're creating this vessel to be used, and therefore everyone agrees that the best thing to do is to any can thing to try to have it ready before Shabbat. So if you're going to be having tuna for Sudah Shlishit or for whatever, the best thing to do is just, if you have time, to prepare before Shabbat, or any canned thing best to open it before Shabbat. If you didn't do that, Rav Ovadia writes that you're allowed to open the cans on Shabbat, because he says it's not making a kli, because it goes straight in the trash. It's a one-time use thing. It's not something that you're reusing. But if a person does plan to reuse those things, then it would be a problem. And the poskim talk about, some people, they'll save the tin cans to put like screws in or whatever. So that would be a problem. Has to be something that is going straight into the trash. Then it would be allowed. But again, it's better to open the cans from before Shabbat. Some write that you should make a hole in the can or whatever. That's what you're gonna ask.
That's what I would say. I've been making holes in my cans whenever I open them on Shabbat. Like I literally.
Yeah, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. Some say it's even preferable not to make a hole.
I hate it.
Yeah, some say you should make a hole, because then you're making it not usable. That's the whole point. You're making it that it won't be a kli when you open it. But some say that no, you shouldn't make a hole, because there's another malacha of soter, of like destroying. Some say it's preferable not to make a hole.
So it's fine, but you have it to open up
yes,
on Shabbat.
Yes. If you didn't do it before Shabbat, you can open it on Shabbat, as long as you're not planning on saving it.
With the can opener also?
Yeah, with a can opener or the ones that just pull off, it's fine.
But how can you do the ones that pull up? Isn't that the same thing as like tissue paper? Like it's already lined for you?
It's not. It's different. The post-game right that it's different.
What
The
if you don't use like all of it?
what?
What if like you use only half the can, you want to save the rest?
Okay. So good question. Yeah. So I it sounds like from the post-game that as long as you're not saving it for a different use, it's fine. Meaning, even though you're leaving some pickles or some whatever in there, if the best thing to do would be, you could dump it out into a different Tupperware and just throw the can away. But I think it's fine even if you don't do that. I think it's fine even if you don't do that because you're not saving it for a different use. You're just using it for this thing and then you're chucking it. Okay. Okay. So now let's get into what you were asking. So one of the requirements for borer was that you're not allowed to use a utensil to help you do the borer. So what about spoons, forks, knives? These are utensils, right? So if I have a salad and let's say I only like the lettuce and the cucumbers, I don't like the tomatoes. So I'm allowed to take the lettuce and cucumbers, right? I'm allowed to take what I like. I can't remove the tomatoes, but I can take what I like as long as I'm eating it right away and I'm not using a kli. So if I'm using a fork, isn't that using a kli? That's what you're asking, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so almost all poskim across the board say that there's no problem to use a spoon, fork, or knife in that manner because the reason you're using it is not to help you do the borer. The reason you're using it is because you don't want to dirty your hands. It's considered like an extension of your hand. Now that being said, if you're doing it in a way that you're like it's helping you do the borer, Ramosha says that's a problem. So, for example, if you like example that the poskim talk about is like, back then they used to have like the fat on top of the milk. Like now the milk is all mixed in, but it used to be that the fat would rise on top of the milk. So if you wanna like perfectly get the fat off, the way to do it is like to use you could use a spoon or something to like perfectly, get it off. That might be borer with a kli because the reason you're using the kli is not because you don't want to dirty your hands, it's because you want to do the borer like very precisely. Or like, for example, if you're using a fork to strain something, that may be a problem. If you're like leaving it there and letting the juice drip down and like holding it, but to use a fork, like if I want to use a fork or tongs to take a piece of chicken out of a soup or something like that, that would be allowed because I'm not using my hand because I don't want to dirty my hand and I don't want to burn my hand. So therefore using spoons, forks, knives in a normal manner to take what you want would not be borer. The question is what you asked. What about those spoons, like the slotted spoons, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it really should be a problem at first glance because it's made to separate. It's made to separate the liquid from the solid. Now many poskim do say it's asur. Some poskim say that as long as you're doing it quickly and you're not trying to drain the liquid so much, it wouldn't be a problem. So like let's say you have like a meat dish that's like you sitting in some liquid and you want the liquid but you're not trying to separate the liquid. So something like that, some poskim would allow you to use a slotted spoon for.
What about salads?
Okay, so salads, I think that so I think that the halacha l'maaseh is if you're using it for something solid, then that would for sure be allowed, right? If you're using it for like rice or potato kugel or whatever, using a slotted spoon, that there's no question about. If you're using it for a salad and like you're doing it specifically because you want the juice to drain,
Right.
then I think that would be a problem if you're like you kind of, because people will scoop it and they're gonna like hold it there or like shake it a little bit to get the juice out and then put the salad on their plate. That would be a problem. If it's something that you're not makpid on the liquid and you want the liquid and you just, that's a spoon that you happen to be using, like a meat or something that you want the liquid, you just that's a spoon that you have, it would be mutter, but it's better not to. It's better to avoid and just use it for solid things.
Those have nice serving spoons.
It's really all
A lot
like
of my
that?
serving spoons have the thing, and I use it for my salads.
Yes. No, you could, as
But I
long
feel
as
like
it's not.
I would have the right intention because when I like, let's say Israeli salad, like I love lemon juice, so if it comes on my plate, I totally don't mind.
Right.
But how can I put it out for my guests if they're not having that intention?
Right.
That
I
I'm
mean,
putting them at the like someone on the table might end up doing borer.
so yeah, it depends also. Like if it's like in the beginning of the salad,
Right.
it's not going to be much of a problem
Right,
because it's
it's
only at the bottom when
Right.
when you're like fishing out the. It's like mostly juice, and you're like fishing out the few pieces of whatever, and you want it to drain out. That would be more of a problem. So you could still use it in the right way. You could put it out, and then when you see it's getting less, you could refill it or something. I don't know. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
If you're using like a fork or something to take out like chickpeas or something, and you're like you're holding it because you don't want it to like drip when you're transferring it, is that okay?
As long as it sounds like you just can't use it to like drain the liquid. So
Wait, but you're taking out the good from the bad. So why does that count? It's immediate use. It's good from the bad, and it's an extension of your hand.
right. So if the fork is just being used as an extension of your hand, that's fine. But if you're using it to like
Right.
You're
to,
like-
actually. Like,
yeah,
I'm
you're
sa-
holding
I'm
it
saying as the
there
spoon,
and-
like if I'm taking out with the spoon, I'm taking out the Israeli salad, the leftovers. I'm saying it's
yes,
because that becomes a utensil now.
if
Before,
it's
that's
if
the condition that
yes,
makes
if the utensil is being used
it. Got it.
to help you do the borer better, that's when it's a problem.
Okay.
But if it's just there to you don't want to use your hands because it's going to dirty your hands, then that wouldn't be a problem. Okay, fine. So that's when it comes to that. Next thing I wanted to get into is also very common. So the Shulchan Aruch writes, he says, "Ein shorin et karshenin." You're not allowed to let karshinin sit in water. So what's karshinin? Basically, they had this. It's like this type of animal food that was dirty, and the way to clean it is you put it in water, you soak it, and you let the water kind of clear off the dirt, and the dirt, either sinks or floats, whatever it is, and that's the way you clean it. So the poskim write based off of this that the same would be true for fruits and vegetables. You have, let's say, grapes or berries or whatever. It would be a problem to let them soak in water if they're dirty, to let them soak in water, and the water will make the dirt sink or make other debris or whatever rise. You can't do that. Now, what about washing fruits and vegetables? So there actually are, believe it or not, some poskim that say that it's a problem of borer. If you have dirty, like visibly dirty things, you should wash it before Shabbat. However, that's not the halacha. The halacha for Sfardim is that you would be allowed to wash, and there's a difference. Rav Moshe Feinstein mentions this. Rav Ovadia brings it. That there's a difference between washing and soaking. Washing, you would be allowed to wash as long as you're planning on eating the fruit right away, because it's similar to peeling the fruit. Just like you're allowed to peel a fruit to eat it, you're allowed to wash it to eat it. As long as, even if it's dirty, or even if it's, Rav Moshe says most of the time when people are washing things, they're clean anyways. But no matter what the reason is, if you're washing because you want to get rid of pesticides, or just because that's just the nature that you wash something before you eat it, or because it's actually dirty, you'd be allowed to wash it under a stream of water, but you would not be allowed to soak it in a like tub of water.
So are you allowed to wash lettuce?
Okay, good. So now what do you do about lettuce? So according to that, it should come out that lettuce, berries, things that you usually soak to make sure there are no bugs in, would be a problem. It would be a problem, and it's better to do before Shabbat. That's really the best thing to do. But the truth is, you can. When I mentioned you're allowed to wash it, you're also allowed to put. You just can't soak it, but you could wash it under a stream, even if you put it in a strainer and you run the water through it. Because the Shulchan Aruch writes that, let's say you have water and you want to give the water some flavor. You want to give it some like wine flavor. And you have some like dried grapes or some sediment. You're allowed to put it on top of a strainer and pour the water through it, and the water will collect some of that flavor. It's not considered borer because there was never a point where it was a mixture. You're just pouring the water straight through. So in that situation, you could use a strainer So you could put berries or fruits or lettuce or whatever in a strainer and put the water straight through. But that doesn't really help for bugs. So what do you do for bugs? So the best thing to do is to wash it from before Shabbat. If you have like berries or something that you need to soak for bugs, best thing to do is to do it before Shabbat. I'm giving you a lot of extra work on Friday. Friday's already hectic, huh?
No, I already washed my lettuce, but like I've been at a hostess house where they've washed the lettuce the day of, and then I was just curious if that was okay, and then if they did and it wasn't okay, are you allowed to eat that salad?
Okay, so we'll the second question is a good question. What if somebody did borer? Are you allowed to benefit from their borer? So with any malacha, this is really in the beginning of the halachot of bishul. With any malacha, if somebody did it and they didn't realize that what they're doing is wrong, the guests or whatever, the other people who are not the person who did the malacha, or not the family of the person who did the malacha, you could benefit from it. Borer also is a little bit different because the poskim say, what if you do borer? It's not something that's irreversible. Most of the malachot are irreversible. You cook something, you can't uncook it. If you do borer, you could easily mix it back together. So that might not be so applicable to washing the lettuce, but I just want to get to what happens if you didn't do it before Shabbat. Is there a way to do it on Shabbat? So I think that the way to do it, if you need to do it on Shabbat, if somebody forgot, I think the best thing to do is you wash it under a sink very well, to make sure that it's fully clean and there's no debris or anything like that. Then that doesn't help for the bugs though all the time. You really have to soak it in soapy water for the bugs.
Right.
But I think that if you wash it well, very, very well, you could let it sit in soapy water for a little bit without agitating it. If you agitate it, then you're really trying to do the borer and get the bugs off. If you just let it sit in soapy water, the bugs are not gonna come off. They're just gonna become more slippery. So I think you could do that and then run it under water again, which you're allowed to do, and hopefully then the bugs will, any bugs will come off, and then afterwards you could check it, because by then hopefully hopefully there won't be anything. I think that would be the best thing to do if somebody did not do it before Shabbat. Okay, so that's as far as soaking vegetables. Now what about soaking silverware? So this is a common thing, right? People like to do it. It makes things much easier. It's just much easier to clean on Motzei Shabbat when it's not stuck on, when the food is not stuck on. But based off of what we said, it seems like it would be a problem. If you can't soak fruit, you also shouldn't be able to soak silverware to get the grease to float and separate from the thing. Yeah, soak the cholent pot, right. So, okay, so some say that it's asur. Others say that it's mutar. Now, what would the reason be that it's mutar? So, some write that there's no borer when it comes to something that the way you use it is it gets dirty, and then you have to clean it, and then you dirty it again, and then you have to clean it again. And that's how you use dishes and silverware. So, some write that there's no borer by something like that. That's not called borer. That's just called cleaning. By fruits, it's called borer because you need to separate the dirt or whatever to be able to use the fruit, to be able to eat the fruit. But by silverware, some say that it wouldn't be called borer. And therefore, you would be allowed to, according to that, you would be allowed to soak silverware. But other issue is that you're soaking it not to clean it to use on Shabbat. You're soaking it to use to be able to clean it after Shabbat. That's where it becomes more of an issue. So what you can do is you're allowed to put dishes in the sink, and you're allowed to wash your hands over the dishes, and water will go on the dishes, right? So you can do that. You can put let's say the cholent pot in the sink, and you could put the utensils in there or whatever, and just wash your hands with soap over the cholent pot, and that way it'll fill up with water. You're not actively, intentionally putting water in there just for that purpose. You're washing your hands, and it's cleaning the dishes in a roundabout way. So that in that manner, the poskim write that since you're not recognizably preparing for washing them, for cleaning them properly after Yom Tov, that would be a manner in which you would be allowed to have dishes be prepared to be cleaned after the Shabbat or the Chag. Okay. So that would be what you would be allowed to do for that. Okay, so next topic is filtering water. There's a couple more topics to cover here. So next topic is filtering water. So what's the halacha with filtering water? So the Shulchan Aruch writes that water which is mayim tzululim, water which is clear, you're allowed to filter. Now what does that mean, water which is clear? It means water that a majority of people in your town will drink as is, then you're allowed to filter it. So if you live in a place where a majority of people will drink the tap water, then you're allowed to filter the tap water. If the water is dirty, then you would not be allowed to filter it. Now, also, additionally, let's say you live in a place where, let's say Baltimore, it's not, the water is pretty clean and people will drink the tap water. But what if you yourself wouldn't? You yourself are like grossed out. You're germaphobe. I'm not touching that. I won't drink the tap water. So in that situation, you wouldn't be allowed to filter it. So to filter water, you would need two conditions. Number one, it has to be that a majority of people will drink it as is, and number two, it has to be that you yourself also will drink it as is. It happens to be with filters. There's a lot of there's Sfarim written just on filtering water on Shabbat, like full Sfarim written just on this. And the different types of filters, and they work differently. Some poskim want to say there's uvdin dechol issues with some filters, and some poskim want to say maybe a brita is different because it's not just like passing through, the water like sits in there and it gets mixed in with those little black balls and it becomes dirty and then it becomes clean, so it's different. But the halacha, most poskim say that as long as it meets those conditions, that you yourself would drink it as is and most people would drink it as is, then it would be allowed. Also, another thing is that some poskim say that if it's not, there's no recognizable difference in the water. Like if you can hold up a cup of tap water and a cup of filtered water, and you can't tell the difference, like you don't see little pieces of debris floating around in one, then other poskim write also that would be a reason that would be mutar.
Can you filter the water and other people benefit from it if they wouldn't drink tap water?
So I don't think you can do it specifically for them, but you could just do it. And if you did it, then I don't think they have to not drink it if it was filtered on water on Shabbat, because you didn't do it for them. I don't think so. Okay, so last little topic here is, so until now we've been speaking about Bora with regards to food and edible things. Now, what about non-food items? Is that any different? Let's say you have
Socks.
Yeah, exactly. Socks. You didn't have time to fold the laundry on Erev Shabbat and it's sitting on your bed and you want to put it away. Are you allowed to do that? Are you not? You have books, toys, I don't know, all those things. You want to sort them out. Silverware. You want to put everything in the right place. Are you allowed to do that? Is that different than food, or is it the same as food? So there are three different opinions in the poskim to be aware of, and we're gonna kind of put them all together. Number one is there's a machloket whether the Isser of Borer applies to Gidule Karka. Only to Gidule Karka or to everything. Gidule Karka means things that grow from the ground. Foods, wood, stuff like that. Some say that it is not an Isser deoraita by things which don't grow from the ground, which makes it a little bit more lenient. Some say that. And it's not so clear. Others argue, but that's just one thing to have in mind. So if it's something that doesn't grow from the ground, plastic, silverware, whatever, those types of things, maybe it would be a little bit different. That's just one thing to keep in the back of the mind. Now, the two important pieces of information here are, there's an Aruch HaShulchan, very famous Aruch HaShulchan, that writes that if you have, he's talking about non-food items, he's talking about how it is that where people sort silverware. He says, what's the heter to sort silverware? To put things, you pick out all the knives and you put that's borer. You can't pick it out if you're not using it right now. What's the heter? So he says, maybe really one answer that he says, a second answer that he says, maybe really you should only pick out what you need right now, and you can't sort them for later. You can only pick out the utensil that you need right now for immediate use. right? That's one thing that he says. But another thing he says is things that are like easily recognizable. You know, you look and you could see very clearly this is a knife and that's a fork, or this is a pair of pants and that's a shirt, or like, you know, this is this toy and that's that toy. It's just easily recognizable. There's no borer. So that's something that he writes. Now the halacha doesn't follow that completely, but there's a different heter that the Pri Megadim says. The Pri Megadim says, if I have a mixture of things and there's no good and bad, I don't want one more than the other. I'm just trying to organize them, and there's no. He says the words. He says, "Hai minayu ochel, hai minayu psolet." Like which one's the good thing and which one's the bad thing. I have a bunch of toys here. I just want to organize them. I'm not selecting the good from the bad. I'm just selecting things to organize them. So the Pri Megadim writes that would be allowed. The halacha doesn't follow him either 100%, but the halacha is that if you have both of these opinions together, Rav Ovadia writes you could be lenient, which means if it's something that's like easily recognizable and you don't want one any more than the other, you're just trying to organize them or sort them, it would be allowed. So if, let's say, somebody has laundry in their bed, on the couch, whatever it is, and you know you want to put it away, so if it's something that's easily recognizable, they're like big articles of clothing and it's very easy to tell what's what, this is a skirt, this is a blouse, this is a pants, this is that, then you'd be able to put them away. But if it's something that it's not easily recognizable, let's say socks, or like it's a bunch of kids' clothes and you have to look at the tag to know which kid it belongs to or whatever, something like that you have to like look at the tag or like pick it up and like inspect it to know what it is, that would be an issue. Because again, you need both conditions. You need to be easily recognizable, and I don't need one any more than the other. I'm just trying to organize them. So if you have both of those conditions, it would be that. Same true with books. If you have, you know, the kids' books around, or Sfarim or whatever it is, they talk about in the shuls, you know, people leave the chumash and the siddur and this and that. Are you allowed to put them away? So the answer is, if you have these two conditions, if it's something easily recognizable and it's something that's you're trying to organize it, you don't need one any more than the other, it would be allowed. So that's as far as those things are concerned. Toys, books, any of those things. When it comes to silverware, same thing is true. But Rav Ovadia does write that the best thing to do to be Yotze, according to more opinions, is not to select out. Like, don't just first select out all the spoons and put them away, and then select out all the knives and put them away. The best thing to do is just pick up whatever one you want, dry it, and then once you have that, you could put it away. You can do the same thing with clothes. You know, just pick up whichever one, whatever comes to your hand. It's called masha baliyad, because you're not selecting. I'm picking up whatever I get. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's a spoon, a fork, a shirt, whatever comes to my hand comes to my hand. Then once I have it, I'll put it away. So I'm not selecting anything. That would be the best way of doing it. When it comes to silverware, when it comes to things like that. Also, certain games, certain like board games or cards or stuff like that, you could get into border also if you're trying to organize. The best thing to do is just, pick it up, see what it is, and then you put it in the right place. But you can't, if you're going to specifically select, then for that you would need the two criteria, that it has to be something that's easily recognizable and something that is you're just trying to organize it. You don't want one more than the other.
Okay, wait, Christian. So
Yeah.
a pile of laundry in your bed. If you take the whole, it's already folded. If you just take the whole pile and just put everything according to like what it is.
Yeah, so you could take, you can't, you just can't, you shouldn't, so if it's already folded and it's easy, very clearly by looking at it what's what. Oh, this is that outfit, this is this thing. So then, you could do that. The best thing to do would just take the top thing, put it in the right place. Take the next thing, put it in the right place. Take the next thing, put it in the right place.
And then, but categorizing it, if you know your kid's clothing, even though they all look very, like, they have similar pants and stuff like that, but you know your kid's clothing very well, you don't need to inspect it. Can you categorize it and then put it away?
Oh, so that's
Not
a good
that
question.
I've ever put away laundry
Yeah.
on Shabbat, but like it actually has happened that it's just stayed on the bed.
So I don't remember. I remember years ago when I was learning borer in yeshiva, I came across. I think it's like 7-8 years ago, maybe more. I came across a sefer that spoke about that if you spoke about somebody who they know, all their sfarim look the same. They're all bound and they're all old and they all look the same, but like the guy knows what's what. Like he recognizes it, he knows. Or someone goes to his closet in the dark. Like nobody else would be able to tell what's what, but like the person knows. So I don't remember if it goes by the person or it goes by like what an average individual would. I don't remember. You have to believe in that or remind me. I'll try to look it up. If you remind me, I'll try. Okay, so that's B'ezrat Hashem that for Borer. That's it. It took 2 times to do 2 sessions to do Borer, but really we covered 3 malachot because Borer includes the malacha of we spoke about Zoreh, like winnowing, that throwing up the thing and the wind blew away the little shells. Borer and Merakid, which is Merakid was sifting. So all those 3 malachot we were covered in Borer, and then B'ezrat Hashem next time there's 3 more malachot that we have for the kitchen malachot. There's tochen, which is grinding. There's that's B'ezrat Hashem next time we'll speak about mashing food for babies and different things that come up with tochen. And then we have lash, kneading. That's also malacha that could come up if you're making different things, egg salads or whatever. It's a malacha that could come up. And then is bishul, which is bishul ofer, which is that's the big one.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a big one. Okay, so B'ezrat Hashem, and then after that we'll discuss what we want to do moving forward.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
Rinsing your dishes and putting them in the dishwasher on Shabbat.
So if you need the space, you're
Not space, it's the messiness bothers you.
yeah. If that's the case, you're allowed to do it.
Really? If
Yeah,
you don't
if
like
it's-
the look and it's just
If it's either if you need the space or it's just like, it's bothering you, you can't function. If you really like it really gets on your nerves and whatever, and like you're not doing it to prepare, you're doing it for right now, because right now you need it to be clean.
Right.
Yeah, so that would be allowed.
So then you're allowed to rinse and put in the dishwasher. What if it's Friday night and for Shabbat the next day you have more guests, so you don't want that piling up.
Right.
Are you allowed to prepare, but it's really for Shabbat the
Yeah,
next
yeah.
day?
That's
so it's
not.
fine?
Yeah.
So Friday night rinsing everything in the dishwasher, so it's a clean
Mhm.
kitchen for the next
Mhm.
day is fine.
I think so. Yeah.
That's so
Yeah. There's no issue of preparing on Shabbat for Shabbat.
right. I didn't
Yeah.
know you could do
You
that.
could even prepare next Shabbat for. You could prepare this Shabbat for next Shabbat. Meaning, if you have, Rav Ovadia writes actually about Rav Ovadia writes about brushing your teeth on Shabbat. So he says an issue that could come up is when you're done brushing, you wash your toothbrush. Why do you wash it? You wash it because you want to use it next time. So you're washing it on Shabbat to use it on Sunday. So he says if you have a special toothbrush for Shabbat, then you're washing it on Shabbat to use next Shabbat. So then you don't have that issue of like preparing everything.
That's really funny because I don't wash my toothbrush.
Really?
Yeah. I'll brush my teeth and I just
Just
put
put
it
it
right
away.
back in, and then the next time I have to really wash it. But if I have a Shabbat toothbrush, I could do that. That's really smart. I did not know that. Oh my gosh, okay. This is good. This is a good class.
Okay. Yeah.
A lot